Hello and welcome to Web Relates. Today we're looking at the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Our first story is by EXE the Hero. Male staff must wear dress shoes or boots. The superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long-sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every day. There was, however, a note in our contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed, if not possible due to a medical condition. No details were provided beyond that. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend and my feet hurt, so I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition and wore my sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I knew that my students wouldn't care. My students, in fact, thought it was awesome that part of my appearance was that of a real person, lol. Wouldn't you know it, that was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal, with CC to the principal and superintendent, reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. No note in my file or anything, just a warning. Fair enough, I suppose, but it pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers, and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. So, cue the malicious compliance. If you noticed from my post title, the dress code just said dress shoes and boots. Well, are you familiar with Demonia boots? I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top, bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3-inch platforms, chains, studs, zippers, and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins, and of course I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing, and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my co-workers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning, and some of the others gave me a high five. After 4 days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly, he asked, "What the hell are those?" So I told him they were boots to ensure that I am in compliance with the dress code, and kept walking. That afternoon, I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional, and this would be documented in my record, and further dress code offences could lead to disciplinary action or suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favour, since they were indeed boots. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked, told me she was unfamiliar with that rule, and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted, and that if anybody had a problem, I could just claim I had sore feet. Long story short, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the rest of the school year and never had another problem. My favourite part of this is that I inspired a few other rebels, and by the time I left that school, there were a solid 10 of us that were just routinely wearing sneakers or other non-dress code compliant footwear in blatant disregard of the dress code every single day. Good times! Definitely a legacy that I left behind in that school. Our next story is by The Flaming Heads. Only one set of keys for the hotel. I used to work at a hotel on a large property that did a lot of business conferences. We had golf buggies to get around, 10 different conference rooms, plus lots of other hotel facilities, storage rooms, etc. Upper management had a strict rule that important locks could only have one set of keys. Upper management also liked to save money by never fixing things when they broke. It must have looked good on paper. One week, we had a big spending client who had booked out the hotel for the week. Night 1, our sales team had got the times wrong for their dinner of several hundred people, so all available staff were sent over 2 hours early to start setting up. The hotel's general manager, GM, announced he would be over shortly to see how things were going, which was almost unheard of for him. What he found was about 20 staff standing around outside the venue. The conversation went something like this. GM says, "Why is everyone standing around?" The supervisor, or SUP, says, "We don't have the keys. We sent a staff member looking for the other supervisor who has the keys now." "Where are your other sets of keys?" "We've only been given the one set of keys." Why don't the staff have a radio on them?
Radios have been broken for over a year and never approved to be replaced.
Why did you only send one staff member to look for them?
We only have the one working golf buggy.
GM grumbles and sends another staff member off on his buggy to look for the keys. Eventually, after everyone standing around for nearly 20 minutes, the keys turned up. The GM was stressed out of his mind that such a big client might be kept waiting. For the supervisor, it was just another Monday. Malicious compliance. The supervisor had access to a backup set of keys that they were strictly forbidden from using. Usually in a situation like this, they would quietly use the forbidden keys and everything would go smoothly. But because the GM decided to be there, they didn't mention the forbidden keys, causing delays and panicking management. Fallout. The next week, each supervisor got their own set of keys. A few weeks later, we got radios for the department. Upper management also started checking in on how things were going from time to time. Apparently, making rules without knowing how things actually work isn't such a good policy. Our next story is by Depleted User. I wanted to look nice around here. I live in a very tenant-friendly area. We have rent control, and landlords are not allowed to do things like demand security deposits, enter the property without proper written notice, or include no pet clauses in leases, which renew automatically every month after a fixed term ends. For the last 11 years, my husband and I have had a great relationship with our landlord, Joe. We've been very lenient in regards to repairs, and Joe was very forgiving when my husband and I both lost our jobs at the same time in 2016 and fell a few months behind on rent. We are now ahead on rent, but Joe is still very behind in maintenance and repairs. We have a whole laundry list of issues my landlord is aware of, but hasn't done anything about for years. But we didn't care because he left us alone and has been overall very kind to us. A few years ago, our landlord allowed us to start storing stuff in an old run-down shed in behind our rented portion of the yard. We never stored anything valuable out there because it's falling apart, and squirrels have been using it to cache walnuts from the numerous walnut trees in our yard. We had an old barbecue, lawnmower, ladders, and outside toys for my kids in there. Until recently. A few months ago, Joe shows up asking about the shed, wanting to know what we had stored out there. I told him, just some old junk we'll probably throw out soon. He told us that the family next door has a mouse problem. We don't. And he wants us to clear out the shed to prevent issues, and because I want it to look nice around here. I said, okay, I'll talk to my husband and we'll get it cleared out whenever we get a chance. I have an infant at home, so I can't go out back and clean it out myself unless someone else is here to watch the baby. My husband had scheduled surgery, so he wasn't able to do any heavy lifting until after he recovered. Admittedly, cleaning out the old shed was not a high priority. Then Joe sent me a passive-aggressive text. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow is garbage day. We know garbage pickups have always been on Monday, and we need to work together to keep the rental property nice for everyone to enjoy. I replied asking him if he had plans to fix the shed, to remove his scrap pickup truck, or to remove his open compost piles and heaps of mixed concrete and scrap metal he has out by the shed he wants us to clean. I also explained that my husband just had surgery and that we weren't planning on cleaning the shed that day. Read it, he did not like that. He showed up unannounced, walked inside and proceeded to yell at us in front of our kids. He complained about his personal finances and the economy, inflation, property, taxes, swore at us about our bloody crap, told us we can't use the shed anymore, and threatened to evict us because clearly you don't like living here and I can get way more for this house than what you're paying now. We told him to leave and that we will not communicate with him anymore unless in writing. He said, fine, we'll do it all by the book from now on, and stormed out. The next day he put an eviction notice in our mailbox complaining that we have excessive garbage and waste in outbuildings, that we refuse to discuss this issue and corrective action with the landlord, and even adding that he felt it was unreasonable given the fact that he didn't evict us for late rent back in 2016. The notice gave us 7 days to correct the issues, or else my landlord can file for an eviction hearing. The next day, while I cleaned out everything belonging to us, sans the walnuts and squirrel poop from the shed, my husband got busy contacting local bylaw and the Rental Housing Enforcement Agency, traffic cops for landlords. He was given information on how to file against the landlord for refusing to do repairs, illegal entry, loss of an amenity, the shed, and harassment. After a surprise inspection that happened last week, we were given a report that said Joe was given 90 days to fix the roof, plumbing, and weeping tile. He must demolish the shed and either erect a new shed or give us a rent reduction because the shed was an assumed amenity. According to my neighbours with the mice issue, the provincial government is also involved now because apparently he filled in a pond without a permit, and now the fire department doesn't have a nearby water source in case of a fire. No hydrants out here. The city, by law enforcement, threatened to fine him for every day that he leaves his large pile of broken concrete and rebar out back. The cherry on top happened yesterday. He sent me a text to tell me that him and the plumber were going to be there within the hour. Normally, I'd be okay with short notice, despite the law saying he must provide 24-hour written notice. Not this time. I told him we need 24-hour notice. He showed up, knocked on the door, and when I reminded him that I won't speak to him in person anymore, he called the police saying that I was being hostile towards him and he doesn't feel safe coming here. He sat outside for 4 hours waiting for the police, who later called me instead of showing up. The officer who called said that Joe was told to stop harassing us, and that he needs to provide 24 hours notice to enter the home. He wanted to make sure Joe left and gave proper notice, and asked me if I wanted an officer there tomorrow to keep the peace. If Joe doesn't do the repairs he's supposed to, we plan to take him to court and file for a rent reduction, and for a lien to be put on the property so he can't just sell it. We're just doing it by the book from now on, and just want it to look nice. Okay guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers!